The ring wasn't hers to choose. The name wasn't one she'd grown up dreaming about. And the man standing at the end of that aisle, tall, composed, watching her the way a man watches weather rolling in from the west, had not chosen her either. They had both simply arrived. Delia Crane had spent 23 years being the sensible one, not the pretty one. That was her younger sister, Blythe, who had their mother's coloring and their father's easy confidence, and the particular gift of making a room tilt toward her the moment she entered it. Not the clever one. That was their brother Foster, who had gone east to study law and sent letters home full of long words and longer opinions. Delia was the one who kept the household accounts when their father's eyes began to fail. The one who wrote the letters Foster dictated but never had time to copy out himself. The one who sat with their mother through the long fever of 1878 and did not sleep more than 3 hours at a stretch for 11 days. She was useful. She had made her peace with that. What she had not made peace with was this, being handed, as part of a business arrangement between her father and a man she had met exactly twice, to a household in Western Virginia that needed managing, and a husband who needed a wife the way a clock needs winding, practically, without sentiment, without any particular preference for the hand that did it. His name was Gareth Ashby, 31 years old, widower, one son, age 4, named Tobias, who had his father's dark eyes and, apparently, his father's talent for silence. The Ashby estate, and it was an estate, not a plantation, not a farm. Delia had been careful to learn the difference before she arrived. Sat on 400 acres outside of Lexington, and it was profitable in the way that things are profitable when someone is paying very close attention to them. That someone, until 6 months ago, had been Gareth's first wife. No one told Delia this directly. She pieced it together, the way she pieced most things together. From the silences, from the housekeeper's careful way of referring to the previous arrangements, from the account books she found in the bottom drawer of the study desk, that were filled with a woman's handwriting so precise it looked almost typeset. Her name had been Caroline. The books ran from 1872 to 1878, and then they stopped. Delia did not open those books again after the first time, but she did not put them away either. She left them exactly where she'd found them, because they belonged to the house and she was still, in some ways, a visitor. The marriage had happened in October. By December, Delia understood 3 things about Gareth Ashby that no one had thought to tell her. First, he rose before dawn, every morning, and she had never once heard him. She would come downstairs at 5:30 to find the coffee already made and his coat already gone from the hook by the door. Second, he read at dinner. Not always, not when they had guests, not when Tobias was brought down to eat with them, but on ordinary evenings, when it was just the 2 of them at the long table. He would have a book open beside his plate, and he would not look at her unless she spoke to him, and sometimes not even then. Third, he was not unkind. This last thing took her longer to understand than the other 2. She had been prepared for coldness. She had even, in her most honest moments, been prepared for cruelty. The casual kind that men sometimes practiced without noticing. The kind that came from simply not caring whether the person across the table was comfortable or suffering. What she had not been prepared for was a man who thanked her, quietly, at the end of every meal, who made sure the study fire was lit before she came down in the mornings even though he himself was already gone, who told his housekeeper, Mrs. Farwell, a composed woman of 50 who had been with the family for 12 years, that Mrs. Ashby's preferences were to be accommodated, and said it in a tone that made it clear he meant it. He did not love her. She was not foolish enough to imagine otherwise. But he treated her as though she had value, and in the particular arithmetic of Delia's life, that counted for more than she would have admitted to anyone. What she could not account for was the feeling that moved through her, very occasionally, when she caught him watching her. Not the weather-watching look from their wedding. She'd grown used to that, filed it under practical assessment, the way a man looks at a new tool to gauge its usefulness. This was something else. This was the look he gave her one evening in late January, when she had been reading aloud to Tobias by the parlor fire, and had not realized he was in the doorway. A look that lasted only a second before he cleared his throat and asked whether Tobias had been given his supper, and the moment closed over itself like water, and she could not be entirely certain she had seen it at all. Her sister Blythe arrived in February. She arrived the way she always arrived, without adequate warning, with more luggage than the situation required, and with a smile that Delia had been reading since childhood and knew meant something had gone wrong. I needed to get away from the city, Blythe said over tea, while Mrs. Farwell moved quietly in and out of the room, and Tobias sat on the hearthrug building something architectural out of wooden blocks. For how long? Delia asked. Blythe's smile shifted. A few weeks, maybe a little longer. You don't mind, do you? The house is so large. You must rattle around in here. Delia did not rattle, but she said, of course not, because that was what she said, and because Blythe was her sister, and because whatever had gone wrong in the city would come out eventually. It came out on the third evening, when Gareth was away at a meeting in town, and Blythe and Delia sat alone at the long table with the candlelight between them. The man's name was Whitmore, a business associate of Blythe's last serious admirer, a man their mother had very much liked, and their father had very much not. Blythe had been corresponding with Whitmore for 7 months. The correspondence had, apparently, moved beyond what could be described as merely friendly. And now, here Blythe set down her fork with a careful little click. Now Whitmore was engaged to a girl from Philadelphia, and the letters still existed, and Blythe needed to recover them before they were found by the wrong people. Delia listened to all of this without interrupting. When it was done, she picked up her wineglass, set it down again and said, how many letters? 14, Blythe said. Or possibly 15, I lost count, and where are they? With someone who would very much like to use them. The silence stretched between them. Tobias was upstairs. Mrs. Farwell had retired. The fire was doing all the talking. Who is this person? Delia asked. Blythe looked at the table. His name is Hargrove. He works for Whitmore. He found the letters when Whitmore asked him to organize his study. She paused. He approached me last month. He wants money. How much money? The number Blythe named was not a catastrophic amount. It was, however, precisely the amount that Blythe did not have, and that their father did not have, and that their brother was not in a position to produce without questions that none of them wanted to answer. Delia understood then why Blythe had come. She sat with this understanding for a long moment. The fire popped. Outside, something moved through the winter trees. You want me to ask Gareth, Delia said. It was not a question. He wouldn't miss it, Blythe said quickly. You said yourself the estate is doing well, and you're his wife. You have every right to. I am his wife of 4 months, Delia said quietly. I have the right to manage the household accounts he has given me to manage. I do not have the right to ask him to purchase silence about my sister's private correspondence without explaining what I am asking him to fund. Blythe looked at her. Something moved across her face. Surprise, maybe, or the particular recalibration of a person who has misjudged a situation. You've changed, Blythe said. I haven't, Delia said. I've just had longer to think. She did not tell Gareth that night. She lay awake for a long time after she heard him come home, heard his quiet step on the stair, heard the particular sound of his study door closing that she had memorized without meaning to. She thought about what it meant to be the person who was called upon to fix things. She thought about the 14 letters, possibly 15. She thought about Blythe's smile when she arrived, and what it cost, always, to wear that smile. And she thought about what it would cost her to go to Gareth Ashby and ask him for something she had not yet earned. She did not sleep well. Gareth knew something was wrong with his wife by the second morning. He had learned her rhythms the way he learned most things. Without intending to, through proximity and repetition. She was a person of small, consistent habits. The way she held her coffee cup with both hands in cold weather. The way she paused at the window each morning before sitting down to write letters. The small line that appeared between her brows when she was working through a problem. He had not meant to learn these things. They had simply accumulated, the way detail accumulates when you are in the same house as another person and you are paying any attention at all. The line between her brows was present all through breakfast. She was pleasant. She was always pleasant. But she answered Tobias's questions about whether bears slept in the winter with the slightly distracted air of someone conducting a different conversation internally. He noticed. He did not say anything, because it was not, he judged, the kind of thing she wanted remarked upon. But he noticed. Her sister he liked less than he expected to dislike her. This was not particularly informative. He had expected to actively dislike Blythe Crane, based on nothing more than the way Delia's letters to her had been slightly careful, in the manner of letters written to someone whose reactions you cannot predict. In person Blythe was charming and aware of her own charm, and not dishonest about it, which he found oddly easier to navigate than sincere effusiveness would have been. She was also watching Delia with an attention that was not entirely sisterly, and it made something in Gareth go quiet and careful. On the 4th evening he found Delia in the study. She was standing at the window with a letter in her hand, not reading it, just holding it, the way people hold things they haven't decided what to do with yet. She turned when she heard him. The letter went, quickly and without drama, into her pocket. I didn't hear you come in, she said. I wasn't trying to be quiet, he said. He moved to his desk, picked up the correspondence that Mrs. Farwell had left there, and did not look at her directly. Delia. She was still. Whatever the difficulty is, he said, I would rather you told me than solved it alone. A long pause. The fire again doing the talking. It isn't my difficulty to share, she said. Is it something that requires money? He looked at her then. She looked back. He watched her working through it. The precise internal calculation of a person who has spent her whole life managing things quietly, and who has now encountered a situation that cannot be managed quietly, and who is deciding how much to trust the new variable she married 4 months ago. Not from you, she said finally. I was not going to ask you. What were you going to do? The line appeared between her brows. I haven't decided yet. Tell me, he said. It was not a command. It wasn't even quite a request. It was more like an opening. The kind a person makes when they are willing to stand in a doorway and wait. She told him. She told him about the letters, the man named Hargrove, the number Blythe had named. She told him without softening it, without asking him for anything, with the flat precision of someone presenting a set of facts and leaving the conclusions to the listener. When she finished, she looked at the fire and nodded at him. She came here because she needed you to ask me, he said. Yes, and you were not going to ask me. No, why not? She was quiet for a moment. Because it isn't your obligation. Blythe's difficulties are not something you agreed to when. She stopped, started again. I am not in the habit of spending other people's resources on problems I brought into their house. Gareth looked at his wife. At the careful line of her shoulders. At the deliberate steadiness of her hands, which were folded in her lap in the way he had come to recognize as the way she held herself when she was working very hard at appearing calm. The problem exists, he said. If it is not addressed, it will become your problem, and then it will be in my house whether you invited it or not. That is a very practical way of looking at it. I am a practical man. I know, she said. And something in her voice, some small careful register, shifted slightly, in a way he couldn't immediately account for. He told her he would handle it. Not through her, not through Blythe, through a letter to his solicitor in Richmond, and a separate letter to a man he knew who had experience in these particular negotiations. The money was not the point, discretion was. And discretion was a thing that could be arranged, if you knew the right people, and were willing to be direct about what you needed. Delia listened. When he had finished, she said, Thank you. Don't thank me, he said. Tell me if there is anything else I should know. She looked at him for a moment. There isn't, she said. Not tonight. He thought later that he should have asked what she meant by not tonight. He thought this as he lay awake in a way that was becoming lately something of a pattern when he had had a significant conversation with his wife. Hargrove proved easier to handle than Blythe had made him sound. Men like Hargrove usually did. They were gamblers at heart, betting on a person's reluctance to involve proper authority. When proper authority appeared interested and unsentimental, the odds changed considerably. The matter was resolved within 10 days. The letters were recovered. The solicitor in Richmond reported back with the particular tone of professional satisfaction that Gareth found both amusing and useful. He told Delia on a Wednesday morning in March, when Tobias was in the kitchen with Mrs. Farwell learning, apparently, how bread dough worked. She read the solicitor's letter. Read it again. Set it down. All of them? She asked. All 14, he said. The solicitor believes Hargrove did not make copies. The source suggests he was not, ultimately, intelligent enough to have thought of it. She let out a breath that was not quite a laugh and not quite something else, but occupied the territory between them. Blythe doesn't know yet. You should tell her. I will. She looked at the letter again. Gareth. It was the first time she had used his name without there being some practical necessity for it. He noticed this. He was trying increasingly not to notice things like this, but he was not succeeding. Yes, he said. I want to understand something. She looked at him with the directness she used when she had decided not to be careful. Why did you do this? And I don't mean, I know the practical argument. You made the practical argument very convincingly. I mean the other reason. He stood there for a moment. Because you were not going to ask me, he said. She waited, and I wanted you to know that you could have. The silence between them was different from the usual kind. It was not comfortable, exactly. It was more like the silence after a door has been opened that everyone has been pretending is just a wall. That's a strange reason, she said finally. Yes, he said, it is. He went to the window. She stayed where she was. Outside, a cold March rain was doing something complicated to the light. My first wife, he began, and then stopped. You don't have to, she said. I know. He turned. She was very capable. She managed everything, the way you manage things. I let her because she was good at it and I was grateful, and because I did not think to ask whether it cost her anything. He paused. I was wrong not to ask. Delia looked at him for a long moment. I didn't know her, she said, but I've read her account books. He was very still. She was extraordinary, Delia said. The way she organized the winter accounts alone. I've been using the same system. It's better than anything I would have designed. She stopped. I'm sorry. I thought you should know that someone noticed. He didn't speak for a moment. Outside, the rain shifted direction. Thank you, he said, and meant it in a way that was not at all practical. Blythe left at the end of March. She left the way she had arrived, with her luggage and her smile, but the smile was different now, more real, or maybe just more tired. She held Delia's hands on the front steps. You're not what I expected you to become, she said. What did you expect? Blythe considered this seriously. Someone smaller, she said. She took the carriage to the station, and the house closed quietly around the absence of her, and Delia stood at the parlor window, long after the road was empty, and watched the place where the carriage had been. Gareth was in the study. She could hear distantly the familiar rhythm of his pen. She had spent 4 months learning the sounds of this house without meaning to, the particular creak of the third stair, the way the kitchen door swelled in rain and required shouldering, the sound of Tobias laughing, which was a rare sound, and therefore precious, and the sound of Gareth moving through the house in the early morning before anyone was awake, quiet and purposeful, like a man who had long ago made peace with solitude. She had not made peace with solitude. She had made an arrangement with it, which was different. She went to the study door, knocked once. Come in, he said. She came in. She sat, without asking, in the chair across from his desk. The one she had not sat in before, the one that was positioned for a conversation rather than a visit. He looked up from his correspondence. She's gone, Delia said. I know, I wanted to say. She stopped, started differently. I know what this marriage is. I knew before I came what it would be, and I was not misled about any part of it, and I want to be clear that I am not asking for anything to be different than what it is. He had set down his pen. But I think, she said carefully, that we have been somewhat more honest with each other over the past month than we were perhaps planning to be, and I think it is good. I think it is something worth. She stopped again. I am not very good at this, she said. You're doing well, he said. I'm not, you are. He leaned back slightly in his chair. You're saying that something has changed, and you don't want it to change back. She looked at him. Yes, I agree with that, he said. It was not a declaration. It was not even, by any conventional measure, a particularly romantic exchange. But Delia felt something settle in her chest, the way things settle when they find the place they were always going to occupy. Your account books, he said. The household ones. You've been maintaining them in Caroline's format. Yes, the winter figures were better this year than last. Mrs. Farwell mentioned it. I noticed some redundancy in the supply orders, Delia said. It wasn't a significant change. It was 18%, he said. She blinked. You checked. I check everything, he said. I should have told you. I should have said it directly, not waited for Mrs. Farwell too. He stopped. You are not invisible to me, Delia. I want you to know that. She was quiet for a moment. The rain had stopped while they were talking, and the room was very still. I know, she said. And then, because she had decided several weeks ago that she was done with performing composure she didn't feel. I think I have been waiting for someone to say that for a very long time. He stood up, moved around the desk in that quiet way he moved. Not slowly, just deliberately, as though he calculated the space between himself and things before entering it. He stopped in front of her. I am going to ask you something, he said. And I want you to answer it honestly, not diplomatically. All right. Are you unhappy here? She thought about it. Truly thought about it, the way the question deserved. The way she would have thought about it if no one were watching. No, she said. Not anymore. He reached down and offered his hand. Not as a gesture of help, not as formality, just as the simplest possible extension of intention. She looked at it for a moment. She took it. Outside, the March light was doing something improbable with the clouds. Tobias was in the kitchen explaining his theory of bread to Mrs. Farwell, with the confident authority of a 4-year-old, who had recently learned something. The house made its ordinary sounds. Delia thought about the ring she hadn't chosen, and the name she hadn't dreamed about, and the man she hadn't expected. And she thought that perhaps the best things were often the ones that arrived without announcement, without ceremony, without any of the apparatus of intention, and required only, in the end, that you be present enough to recognize them. She did not let go of his hand.